everyone, and welcome to the Yarn Duchess podcast. My name is Amy, and I'm the Yarn Duchess. It has been 6 weeks since my last recording. I didn't expect for it to be that long, but May has always been a crazy month in our family, and I don't know why I thought it would be any less crazy this year, but it was pretty crazy. Normally every year we have 4 birthdays that take place in May, one of which is mine. And also we have Mother's Day, Memorial Day weekend. Typically we've had graduations during this month, but this year we had an unexpected death of a friend, and we had a memorial service to attend. So that, on top of the crazy weather we've been having, temperatures anywhere from the upper 50s to the low 90s, and hail and wind, and oh my God, the allergies. The allergies knocked me down for about 2 weeks. Since we're new to the Colorado Springs area, anytime you move, you get confronted with new allergens, and the grasses down here were particularly bad this year, and allergies, I have allergies to grasses. And so for about 2 weeks, I had a sore throat and burning eyes and swollen glands, and just felt bad all around. So that was my other excuse for not recording earlier. But good news is I got a lot of knitting done and finished a bunch of projects and started a couple of new ones. And yeah, that pretty much covers my absence for this past 6 weeks. So to my subscribers and viewers that have been waiting patiently for the announcement of the winners from last podcast's 250 subscriber giveaway, I apologize for keeping you waiting so long, but I have 2 winners that I will announce at the end of this video. Also, if you've been watching my previous videos, you know I've been having a heck of a time with editing. The learning curve is pretty difficult, at least for me, and I'm going to try something new. I thought I had it pinned down last time, but I was wrong. When I went to the editing part and downloaded or uploaded the video to the YouTube, I realized that I was out of sync again, which is very annoying, at least to me. But thank you for putting up with it. I'm going to try something new this time. Instead of putting my video of visits to yarn stores or yarn events at the end of the podcast, I'm going to put them in the middle. And then the beginning of my podcast will be mostly finished objects. And the end of the podcast will be works in progress, some yarn enhancements, stash enhancements, and the giveaway announcements. So let's get started. So the first thing I wanted to bring up, I mentioned earlier that I had a birthday this month. Last year, my birthday was just 6 weeks after my son's death, and it was supposed to be a very significant birthday for me, and I had thought that for the first time that I would have a big party. I'm not a big party person, but turning 60 is a big deal, and I wanted to kind of just have a party. And so after my son died, that party idea just like, no, I don't want that. So my husband and I had decided that we would just go out for a quiet dinner, just the 2 of us. And I get there and I find a bunch of familiar faces sitting at a table. And it turns out that my husband had invited my stitching group that I formed about 10 years ago. I have some wonderful, lovely ladies that are part of that group. And they, about half of them showed up for my surprise birthday party. And while I really wasn't in the mood for company, seeing some good friends that were there for me was amazing. So I had a memorable 60th birthday anyway. But one of the things I want to share from that party was that one of the gifts that they gave me was this blanket. And it's too big to get it all on screen, but the amazing thing about this blanket, I'll try to try to get pieces of it. You can see there's crochet, and there's knitting, and they're all in blocks in different sizes, different yarns. And the card that came with it was that explained that each of the ladies in the group, even though some of the ones that were not able to actually attend the dinner, had stitched a square, and they all stitched them together. And they said that each square was as unique and individual as each of them. And so I just thought that was the most beautiful thought, and it was basically a collective hug from the group. So I was really inspired by this blanket. I have a lot of people in the group that are new to crochet and knitting, and to see some of their work, whether, it's not perfect, but to me, it is perfection. This blanket is perfection. And one of the ladies in the group, her husband just passed away. That was the memorial service that we attended. And I thought, you know what? I think she would love something like this. And she's a crocheter. So I let the group know that that we were going to make a blanket for her, because I knew she would love it as much as I love mine. So if you were looking for an idea for a blanket, this is a wonderful one. Shortly after I started the podcast, one of my viewers had suggested that I watch Joey's Scarf podcast by Linda Grace. And she had also lost a son about 5 years ago. But she had mentioned in her first podcast, she said that the reason she was doing the podcast was that she wanted to be part of a community of knitters and makers that were had the level of interest in knitting that she did. That she had friends who knitted and crocheted, but none of them were really at the same level that she was. And that's pretty much how I feel about my doing this podcast. These ladies in my group, some of them have been knitting or crocheting for a few years, some longer, but none of them really has the level of interest that I do. So they're always looking to me for help and guidance, and I'm happy to do it. But it's kind of nice to have some peers that you can look up to and get guidance from and learn something from. So wonderful group of ladies that I have locally near me, physically close, but I'm really happy to be part of a community that, while not so close, has the enthusiasm and the interest and the expertise that I'm looking for in my own work. So wonderful blanket. And I just want to point out too, one of the things that touched me the most, one of the things that we do in our Stitchers group is that once a year we'll get together and we'll make a project to sell at our church auction. And this has kind of helped stretch some of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, I'll have to edit this out and when I come up with the word, but anyway, it's stretched their, God, what is the word? Oh, it has stretched their skill level. And this little block here was, we had done a pattern from Lion brand. It was a, I wish I could remember the name of the pattern. I should have looked that up first. I'll put it in the notes. But it was made up of blocks, and we had 6 people participate in making this blanket, and each block had a different patterns that you would pick up stitches and add on to the side, and then pick up more stitches and add on again. And this was one of the patterns that was in that block, and I recognized it and the color of the yarn. And I just thought that was great that they had taken something that they had learned that we had done as a group effort and made that part of the blanket that was given to me. So this is my, I call this my love blanket. It's just a great big hug, and every time I feel a little down, I just grab it and wrap myself up in it, and it makes me feel better. Another finished object that I have is one that I started a couple of years ago, and this is the Hitch sweater. It was a pattern that I found in the Interweave magazine, and I made this for my daughter, and it's got some beautiful cabling on the sleeves and very simple stockinette stitch with some rib stitch on the sides. But this was my first sweater for someone other than myself that I completed, and what makes this sweater extra special is that it's made from alpaca yarn that I spun and then knitted, and my daughter is just absolutely thrilled with the sweater. But unfortunately, it's one of those lessons that you learn about alpaca. I love alpaca. It's wonderful for shawls because it drapes beautifully and it's so wonderfully soft around the neck. But one of the downsides is that it doesn't have a lot of memory, and it will stretch out and it will grow and it will not bounce back. And so I have learned since that I should incorporate or blend alpaca with another soft wool like merino or silk or something that will help hold the stitches and the structure of the yarn so it doesn't stretch all out of shape. So I have some pictures of her wearing the scarf, and I will include those somewhere in this podcast. But this is the Hitch sweater, and I don't have the name of the designer, but I will also include that in my notes. So another finished object that I have is I finished another pair of socks. These are my another pair of toe-up socks with the German short row heel, and this is made from a Blueface Leicester nylon blend. So it's a little toothier than the merino nylons that I have been working with, but I understand that BFL holds up better for wear and tear than merino will. But I just wanted to try this out. This is a yarn by Independence Street, a local yarn dyer in Denver area. So I made a pair of socks that fit me, and then I have about this much yarn left over, so I almost think that I could make another pair of socks if I use a contrasting heel and toe. So that is my finished object. Oh no, I have a couple more. So another one that I have, let me see here. This is a birthday present for my sister-in-law. She's not one of the May birthdays. Hers is actually the end of April. So anyway, but I made this shawl for her. It is called I have it here as it's the Easy Shaped Shawl, and it's another Craftsy kit that I got last summer, and it is pretty easy. I've blocked this shawl. I just haven't tucked in the ends yet, but I will do that. She and I are meeting tomorrow for lunch, and I will give her her present then. But this is made from Lion's brand Shawl in a Ball, and it is, let me use my glasses. It's called Wind Chimes. This particular color is called Wind Chimes. And it is, I know it's cotton. Yes, it's 61% cotton, 34% acrylic, and 5% other fiber. And the other fiber, I imagine, is the stellina in here that's making it all sparkly. But anyway, she had told me that she liked pinks and purples, and so I was making the shawl actually for myself. And she came by the house one day, and she goes, "Oh, that's so pretty. I would love that." And so I thought, well, I'll give it to her. So I'll have to get myself another Shawl in the Ball yarn and make myself another one of these. But anyway, that is the Easy Shaped Shawl. And then finished, finally, let me get it here. I finished my, I think it's inside out. I actually put it on. Yeah, it's inside out. I put this on to try on to see if it would fit, and it does, happily. But it is so incredibly warm. It's a single ply merino that I hand dyed, but it is so warm. I couldn't wear it. I just pulled it right off and didn't even think to turn it right side out again. But anyway, this is the Pavement Shawl by Veera Valimaki, and I made it a little bit shorter because I wanted it to hit me right at the hips, not below. So anyway, it's so warm, like I said, otherwise I would be wearing it for this video, but maybe later in the fall you'll see me wearing it. So I think it's supposed to hit 90 today, and so down here in the basement is really nice and cool. So let me follow my notes here. So yep, I have done all of my my finished objects. I did want to, however, show you my acquisition, my birthday gift from my husband. We went up to the mountains for the weekend and with the family, little family getaway, and we were up in Silverthorne, and nearby is a town called Fraser, and so we stopped by a few of the stores, places to eat, an ice cream candy shop, and stopped by this really nice bookstore, and I got this Vogue knitting, and I just sat there in the library, not the library, the bookstore, and just started looking through this, and I was like, they cover everything. It's like brioche knitting and different shaped shawls. So I can do shawl construction. Maybe I might do a little designing. I don't know. But anyway, I just thought it was, oh, and the hats, types of hats. So I'm going to really enjoy going through this book, and highly recommend it. Anyway, so that's my acquisition. So at this point, I'm going to introduce my video from my trip to Yarnfest. Yarnfest is I guess it's like maybe Yarndale or what's that one up in New York? Blank again. But anyway, it's just a yarn festival, but it's indoors in a hotel, and they have a marketplace there, and then they have classes and things like that. But it's a 2.5 hour drive from me. It used to be an hour and a half, and since I moved further south, it was 2 hours. It's up in Loveland, and it takes place the first part of April, end of March, first part of April. And so it's always been a little tricky for me to get to Yarnfest every year. I didn't go last year, and a couple of years before that I wasn't able to go because the weather, you know, in spring, well, it's still, yeah, it's spring, but we get snow and wind, and it's just crazy. So I was glad to be able to go this time. A lot of familiar booths, a lot of booths were in the same places, so I discovered some new yarn that I'm looking forward to sharing with you, and also yeah, I guess there's some new yarns. I was a little disappointed that one maker was not there that I was particularly hoping to see. She made soap and lotions out of goat's milk, and I had bought some a few years ago and just thought it was wonderful, but she wasn't there. So anyway, I'll just keep a lookout for that. But anyway, so enjoy the video on Yarnfest. Oh, it's not, mostly you'll see still pictures. I had taken some video, but you know, I just wasn't sure about capturing people unawares on video and then having it out on YouTube. Wasn't sure if I needed to get people's permission to video them and put them on YouTube, or if it doesn't matter. But anyway, I'd rather err on the side of being safe. So I just took a bunch of stills and I put those together into a montage. So that is my Yarnfest video for this podcast. So I'll see you back in a few minutes with works in progress and my stash enhancements, and yeah, the drawing. See you later. You enjoyed the video on the Yarnfest, and now I'm going to show you the my stash enhancements from that show. So when I first walked in the marketplace, the booth directly across from the door was Western Sky Knits, and I just fell in love with their yarn, especially this one. I bought 2 skeins. This one is called Tiger Eye. Oh, the sun's coming out. Anyway, this is a merino nylon superwash 75/25, and I just love this color. I haven't decided what I'm going to make with it, but I just loved these colors. Anyway, so that's my first stash enhancement. The second one was I picked up 2 of these. I thought this is the only BFL nylon that I could find at the marketplace, but it's also a tweed, and I just love tweeds, so I thought I'll make some BFL tweed socks. This one is called Woodland Sage, and this one is Fog Advisory, and I thought it was really cute. They it's tucked in a little stitch marker. It's a little tie, and because the name of the company is, the name of the company is Two Guys Yarn Company. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, so this is anyway, this is, I think these will make really nice socks. I got the green for me, and I'll make the grayish blue ones for my husband. So the next one I thought was really interesting. I'd seen these before. I thought it was one yarn that was dyed and spun differently throughout, and I thought it was like all one string, but it's actually 5 different fibers all bundled together. And the yarn came with a free shawl pattern. So I think this will make a really interesting bohemian type of shawl. So I'm looking forward to playing with this. And then, oh, I lost my bag. Oh, I forgot to show the bag. This is a really nice, it's like parachute fabric. But it'd be nice to take out when it's weather's maybe a little bit wet or threatening to rain. Then it's got this little notions pouch. I'm assuming this is a notions pouch. Maybe it's for reading glasses, but anyway, this is the Yarnfest, Interweave Yarnfest 2018. And then I also picked up some fiber to spin with. I'm also a spinner. I think I mentioned that in my first podcast, but I haven't really discussed spinning much, other than I showed some of my hand spun yarn that I was going to make socks out of. By the way, that project has been put on the back burner. I realized that the yarn was a little too busy for the pattern that I chose, which was Harmonize Everyday Socks. And so I'm going to rip that out and decide on what I will make out of it. I think it'd make a nice hat. Maybe I'll make some vanilla socks, but I think I'll use a pattern that calls for DK weight, because it just, the yarn was just a little bit more on the thick than the thin side, and it was just the socks were coming out huge as I was trying to knit them with fingering weight yarn pattern. So anyway, the 2 fibers that I got was from the same booth. It's called the Sincere Sheep, and they're out of Napa Valley, so they came quite a way to the show. But this one, the white one, is a merino silk blend. And this one, the brown one, is a merino Wensleydale and Lincoln blend. So anyway, I'm looking forward. They're both really soft, and I'm looking forward to spinning this. I have been in the spinning mood lately. I've been very diligent with my knitting. I've hit a really nice zen spot with my knitting. I found myself knitting pretty monogamously on my projects, and so that's why I have so many finished objects. And I didn't really have much cast-on-itis, and so it was just a nice place to be as far as knitting goes, but I was really itching to spin. And I kept telling myself, well, you'll have plenty of time to spin come July and September, because that's when the Tour de Fleece and Spinzilla take place. But I thought, why put off doing something that I feel like doing? So I started spinning, and I spun up this merino. It's 100% merino. I'm not, can't remember for sure if it's superwash or not. I'll look it up and put it in the notes. But I picked this this up in the Salida Fiber Festival last year, and it was the 100th sheep booth. And I picked up this and another, I think it was a 6-ounce braid. And this intrigued me because it was the first time I had seen speckled roving. And I really liked the way it came out. I think a lot of having a white interspersed with color softens the color and gives it a really interesting look. And I'm trying to decide if I want to ply this back on itself or ply it with the blue roving that I had picked up. And when I started spinning this, I was thinking about doing that. So anyway, I'll have to think about it once I get the blue spun up, and we'll see how that looks. So anyway, so I've been doing some spinning, and I'm going to be doing a lot more spinning come July. I've never done the Tour de Fleece before. I'm not exactly sure how it works, so I'm going to look all that up, but I know it runs for 3 weeks during the same time that the Tour de France is taking place. I have participated in Spinzilla before, and I've been on a team for a couple of years, and I think we finished 12th last year, which was pretty exciting. It's an international event. I don't know if you've heard of it, or if you're a spinner or beginning spinner, but I highly recommend. I joined my team when I was just doing drop spindle, and I think I did about 1.5 miles in yardage. And then last year, I think I spun like 7.5 miles. So it's just a lot of fun, and you get a lot of spinning done. This cabinet behind me is just filled with roving, even on top and in the drawers in the cabinets below. So I'm getting to the point where I feel like I really want to start knitting with my hand spun. I was doing a lot of spinning and then a lot of saving in my cubbies. My hand spun is just over there, just looking at me. And I feel like I have some projects that I think will lend themselves to the hand spun. So looking forward to getting a lot of spinning done and then knitting with hand spun. So, one of the other things that I got at Interweave Yarnfest is when you register to go into the marketplace, you have a choice of a couple of magazines, and I chose the Spin-Off magazine. So it's been sitting in my bag since early April, and I completely forgot about it. So now that it's out here, I'm going to have to go through it. So I think I've covered everything. Let me just check my notes here. So I talked about acquisitions. I talked about my everyday sock failure. I talked about Tour de Fleece and Spinzilla and knitting with my hand spun. No, I think that's pretty much it. So I guess all that's left is the announcing the winners of the drawing. Oh, no. I forgot. I did have a couple of works in progress. Duh. So, sorry, I had to wait just a few minutes longer. I started, actually just yesterday, I realized I didn't have any works in progress other than a shawl that I was working on. So I thought I would cast on real quickly some more toe-up socks. This is using the Crazy Zauberboll sock yarn. And this color actually has a name, not just a number, and it's called Mars Experiment. And this is the yarn. And I'm casting on these socks for my son. I'm going to start working on Christmas gifts. I mean, I know it's just the end of May, early June, but I don't want to be rushing at the end of the year. So if I have a project in mind, then I start working on it. The other work in progress, a little further along, I cast on the second sock of my husband's Zauberboll. I was not too crazy about this happening here. I mean, it started with the gradient, and then it got into this really solid navy blue for the longest time. And then when I worked the short row heel, it brought the gradient started up here and then came to the front. And then by the time I got to the front of the sock to go back around again, it had already turned into a pretty solid light blue. So I have a very distinct line here. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's still, they're socks. I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about that. So my second sock is actually starting with the navy blue, and it's gone on for quite a while. It's just now starting to change into a lighter blue. but these socks are for my husband, Christmas present. And then finally, as I showed you in my last podcast, I started on my Harmonize shawl, and I showed how there was 2 skeins of yarn that changed color. They were segmented, but when you wound up the hank into the cakes, you wound one with the dark side in the middle going outward to the light, and the other one the reverse. And that's how you get the color changes in the shawl. And I'll show you the picture once again. That's what it looks like. So I have to tell you, I don't like to, I have to get a drink of water, excuse me. There. So I don't like to speak bad about anybody's work, but I have to tell you that it was quite frustrating getting this shawl started. I just felt like the instructions were more complicated than they needed to be. But once you get into the rhythm and understand how the designer writes her pattern, it just moved right along. And so I'm really happy with the way this is coming out. The problem though with the color changes is that, or the way the yarn is wound, when you go from light to dark and dark to light, at some point in the middle, you're going to have the same color be in the same spot. And when you're used to the main color being the light color and the contrast color being the dark color, and then you get into the middle here where the main color and the contrast color are the same color, it gets a little tricky. And I did have to focus and to get through this part. I couldn't watch TV or anything. And so now I'm on the other side where the contrast color is the light color and the main color is the dark color. So I'm almost done. I'm not almost done, but I'm at this point, so I'm right about here. So it's just basically finishing out this. This is a 16 pattern repeat that you repeat 6 times. So I'm on the 1, 2, 3. I'm starting the 4th repeat on this pattern. But anyway, this is the Harmonize shawl, and I think it's just going to be gorgeous when it's done. So that is it for my works in progress. And now I will announce the winners of the giveaway. So I did I counted up the comments from my last podcast, and it was just the comments from the last podcast, not all the podcasts. And I had 15 comments. And the first, and I took the comments from the first comment to the last comments and just put them in a list and did the random number generator. And the first number was number 10, and that is Cindy Minnick. And the next number that I generated was number 7, and that was Michelle Mills. So Cindy and Michelle, just email me. Email me. I will provide an email address at duchessfiberarts@gmail.com down below, and let me know which yarn or fiber from my shop that you would like to have, and I will get that off to you this week. So anyway, congratulations, and thanks so much for coming back and watching my show. I'm going to try to do my podcast every 3 to 4 weeks. I promise. I'm not going to promise. That's silly. I'll try not to go 6 weeks. I think that this was just an unusual circumstance given the weather and then the time of year. So anyway, thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed what I had to show you, and I hope that you'll come back and see me again. Take care.